Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to look at the two-player game, Genesis, Battle of Champions by Haunted Castle Gaming. So let's go ahead down to the table. I'm going to give you a general idea of how the game plays, then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts.
Alright, so this is what a basic setup of Genesis Battle of Champions might look like. You're going to have a 5x6 mat. If you don't have one, you can make one or whatever, but this one came with the starter set. And it has the rules on the opposite side. You'll have some dice for using for your health and aura. I'll explain that in a second. And you're going to build a deck. There's a couple different things you're going to pay attention to your deck, but the biggest thing is picking who your champion is. There's a lot of them to pick from, but a couple things you need to pay attention to when you're picking your champion is its health, how much health. Once your opponent knocks that down to 0, they win. Or if you run out of a deck in the game, you also will lose, so your opponent will win. And some of the cards for their abilities require you to discard cards from the top of your deck. But you're also going to look at these symbols on the right, and the cards that are in your deck have to share at least one of these symbols. You're also going to look at your starting aura and see for what cards you're putting in the deck if it's an appropriate amount for those cards, because you're going to be spending that aura to do different things throughout the game, and you don't want to have too many high costing cards in there for that require a lot of aura to be spent, run out early, and then not have any the late game. Also, you could pay attention to the discount that you get, which is right here, for any cards that are cast. So that's important too. But once you pick your champion, you're going to put them on the board in that first slot in front of you, and then you're going to, in your deck construction, you're going to have 50 cards. There's no duplicate limit. You can have as many as you want, but you can't have any more than 250 chi, which is going to be this number right here. Make sure that that number added up throughout your deck does not exceed 250, and your card have 50 cards in your deck, and you're ready to go. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind on your turn is going to be divided into rounds. So on the first round, you're going to draw your 5 cards. And on each turn, you're going to draw a card. Now, you can actually dump your entire hand basically on your first turn, but then for the rest of the game, you're only going to be drawing 1 card. But let's go ahead and go over what a turn looks like. So on your turn, like I said, you're going to draw a card. Then you're going to go into your move phase. So at the beginning of it, well, let's start over again. At the beginning of a round, which a round will last until all the players have exhausted all of their characters on the field, but I'll go over that in a second. So we'll say a round started, no exhaustion tokens to remove. The turn starts, you draw a card, then you get the move phase, and you can move your champion once. Now, and you can rotate 90 degrees. So you can rotate it this way or this way. Now, you can actually stay in place and rotate it if you want, but you can move one and rotate 90 degrees if you wish. You don't have to do any of that, but you can. If you decide to move a second time, you'll actually go straight into the end phase of your turn. So you won't get to go into the main phase, which is the fun phase where you get to do all the fun stuff. So once you've gone to that and let's say you didn't go into your second movement, so you didn't go into your end phase, and you're actually in the main phase, you can then play cards. So you can summon monsters beside you, you can play different spells, and they have different speeds on them. So we'll go over those in a second, but basically when you're summoning a creature, it's called beckoning in the game. You're going to pay the required aura, and you're going to place the creature out. Now, when a creature gets placed out, it is going to have summoning system sickness, so you have to use some sort of marker on it. Now, I did forget to mention that you're going to need to have some dice in the game to show your health, your aura, and you're going to want some tokens of some sort to place on the creatures when they're exhausted. You could also perform any abilities that have an action speed in them. Now, if we get into it a little bit, the two most important things are going to be action and swift speed. So action speed is going to be stuff that you can play during your main phase or do during your main phase. Swift speed you could actually do throughout the turn. So swift speed is going to be like your fast stuff. Action speed is going to be your slow stuff. That is a good thing to keep in mind throughout the game, and those are the two most important. And again, I'm not going to actually go over all the rules, but I am going to explain how the general idea how to play the game. The other thing important that we haven't gone over yet is attacking. And when you attack, if you look at the grid on the top of the character or monster, it's going to have a little dot. That is the area effect, or basically where the champion or monster can hit. So both of these that I've played out so far can only hit one ahead of them. But if you look at the opponent's champion, the opponent's champion can hit one space away from itself, 2 spaces away from itself forward, or 1 space away from itself in the diagonal direction. So this one is a little bit of a range. So if this opponent was here, this archer could hit this champion, but this champion couldn't hit the archer. The other thing you can do throughout your turn, like I said, you could dump your entire hand. You can play I could play all these in my hand if I wanted to. I could also play these spells. Now, if you play spells, you're going to put them in a stack. Now, what's going to happen is your opponent can then play spells against you, and 5. Then my opponent gets it. Spells. So if my opponent wanted to play Smoke Bomb, then I get a chance to react and go on until we're all done. And then the spells are resolved from the last one played down to the first one. So this game is a little bit skewed towards the defender, so keep that in mind when you're playing the game, that you are looking for basically what your opponent can do. So if your opponent has a bunch of cards in their hand, they probably have a bunch of spells. So you want to try to plan out your movements and attacks in either one of two ways. In a blitz, where you're going to go in and you're going to use all your stuff as fast as possible and try to get the opponent down as quickly as possible, or you could try to wear out your opponent and attack when they only have a couple cards in their hand, so they have very little ability to react to the spells you play and the attacks. Now, you'll notice that some of your characters have abilities on here. Now, if you're activating that person, they'll become exhausted at the end of the turn, but if you haven't moved them twice or anything strange like that, you can use the action abilities during the main phase or the swift abilities during the end phase, or main phase, or at the start. Once you do, the player or character or monster will become exhausted. And like I said, once all the monsters and champions on the board have become exhausted, a new round starts. Now, I just wanted to go over that really briefly because I wanted to show how simple the game actually is, but there's a lot of depth and strategy in when you do things. So getting the initial idea of the game is not going to be very difficult, but understanding how to build the deck correctly, how to when to deploy cards, when to play different cards is the meat of the game. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind in the game, that there are going to be 4 different types that these can be. You're going to have your action speed, you're going to have your swift speed, you're going to have your continuous, and you're going to have your trigger. Now, your continuous, if you have any with a continuous, this one actually has a trigger on it. If you have a continuous, it happens all the time. If you have a trigger, when a certain thing is met, it'll occur. Now, another really important thing in the game when you look at these cards is you have to look at what they do. So this is an action speed thing. This is what it does. Just a little name for it there. And this is what it costs to do that. So you have to pay attention to these. Like this one here, you have to exert them to use your dark attack 4. So it does 4 damage. If they have the little fire symbol on there, that means you're going to have to discard that many cards from the top of your deck. A lot of them cost ore, though, or require exertion. So those are the 4 different that you have in there, and that's, you want to pay attention to that a lot. And so that is basically going to be the general idea how you play the game. Like I said, this isn't really rules. This is just going to give you an idea how the game plays. So in the game, you're really just going to be casting spells, summoning allies, and making attacks. You're going to be maneuvering your champion and your different summons through the board, and you're going to be trying to get them into position to do as much damage as possible. Like, you will be paying a lot of attention to the little dots on here for the area of effect that the champions and the monsters can actually hit in. So you're going to try to get around that. Like, you might try to sneak a monster in here, rotate this one so it can hit, but this champion can't hit back and has to actually move away to be able to do that. You can corner them, you can do all sorts of fun stuff. So the majority of the game is going to be a tactical strategy card game where you're going to be trying to do hand management to make sure that you don't use up all your cards and make yourself defenseless. Use them in meaningful ways to do big attacks, to either lower your opponent's health down to 0 or have their library run out. Either way, that's the 2 victory conditions of the game. You run your opponent's library to no cards and they can't draw. The game ends for them and you win, or you get them down to 0 health and you win. So that is generally how you're going to go through and play Genesis Battles of Champions. Let's go back up the table here and I'll give you my final thoughts on the game.
Okay, so that was Genesis Battle of Champions. Now, it is a really fun 2-player skirmish card combat game. I really like how it's like sort of a mashup between like Magic and Summoner Wars. I love deploying cards to the grid. I love the strategy of having different like attack patterns available on your champions and the different summons. And I like the back and forth that you have with playing the faster cards. Now, the game itself, you have to realize, is a CCG. So inherently in a CCG, you have a large card pool, which this does, and a large amount of support, which this has. So you can get a large diversity of cards. You have different rarities of cards. So some players may have more rare cards than others. What I do really like is that even in some of the epic rare ones that are in the game, they aren't like totally game breaking. You can work around them. You could find that in Magic sometimes, where you can get some rare cards that are super powerful. So a lot of times it comes with whoever has the most money, has the most deck. This game, however, you can still play at a very high level and not have to spend a ton of money. You can have a really fun deck and not spend a ton of money. That's what I really like this about the game. Now, if you want to be able to like trick out your deck in a certain theme or certain style, or you want to do some things in a certain way, or you want to get that epic full art card, then you could, if you wanted to, spend a bunch of money and get those in there. So you do have the opportunity to play it either way you want. Like, you can get the starter sets and just play it, maybe throw in a couple extra booster packs and stuff. Over time, you can pick more in and you can adjust your deck and you can have a lot of fun. So that is a very big pro for the game. Like I said, just keep in mind, it's not like a living card game where you get a set and you have all the like specific cards in there and you just do that. It is a CCG. So as for that, my general feelings on the game is it is a lot of fun. It is well designed. I love, like I said, the extra strategy of playing on a gridded battlefield. I love the extra strategy of having to move your cards or slash units in the board to get them into position. I love the spells that you have and the different things that you can use to augment your attacks or defend yourself. there's a lot in the game. The game goes really fast too, which is really nice. So you can play games in like 15 minutes and then go into the next game. So overall, I like Genesis Battle of Champions. If you're looking for a fun CCG to play that has a good depth of strategy, that isn't hard to teach, some of the terminology in it, it's a little, I would say it's a little hard to get at first, but it's not difficult. So once you get the wording down for those action and what's on those cards, the game flows. So there's a little bit of difficulty at first just getting used to the terminology in the game and such, but other than that, easy to teach, fast to play. You can get through a intro game in 10-15 minutes and then be ready to go. So that's my thoughts on Genesis Battle of Champions. Thank you for watching.